Hi, I'm Michael Jackson Heimos with Santa Monica's Morgan-Wixson Theater, here with a talkback conversation with Tom Laskey. Tom first joined the Morgan-Wixson in 1955 when the Morgan Theater was on 5th and Ocean Park. Over the years, he's designed sets, he's performed on the stage, worked behind the scenes, and today he still house manages for us at age 92. I wanted to learn a little bit about the history of the Morgan-Wixson and get to know Tom a little better. You know, Tom, you and I first did a show when I first joined the Morgan-Wixson, and of course I see you house managing all the time, but I don't know that much about you.
To begin with, Michael, I first joined the Santa Monica Theater Guild in 1955.
That was before they were in the current theater.
Oh, by all means, yes. And I was looking at the history of it, and I was actually surprised myself to find out that the Theater Guild had done some 80 some shows before I arrived in LA.
So you're not from LA then?
From Ohio, Toledo, Ohio.
When did you come to Los Angeles?
I was drafted into the Army in 1953, and immediately they sent all of us out to the Seattle area for basic training. So I was on the West Coast, and I had some relatives in Los Angeles, so I came down when I got out of the service to meet them. Plus, my best friends in the service were from LA and got out at the same time I did. So I came to Los Angeles. I found some work, and of course I found the theater, and I went to watch a couple of their things, and then I joined them in the fall of 55.
So that was at the old Morgan Theater on Ocean Park, right?
5th and Ocean Park.
What was that theater like?
It was a one-story red barn, sort of.
So at the old Morgan on Ocean Park, how many seats were in that small theater?
My recollection is that it was just a little over 100.
So it's a smaller stage space than we have now.
That's right.
So how did you get involved at the Morgan then?
I had gotten a job in West LA in 1955 in the summer with my friend, and he went to UCLA, and he continued at UCLA, and I had finished my college at the University of Toledo. So I got a job, and then I started watching theater, and I was in Santa Monica or near to it. And so I went over to the Morgan-Wixson, and I started working there, helping with building and so forth. And then eventually my first show was in the fall of 55, and it was Judgment Day was the name of the show. I was almost a supernumerary, I only had a couple lines. I was a courthouse guard. The whole play took place in court, Judgment Day, and the judge was a real judge in Santa Monica. The actors was Dorothea Lord. She was a fine actress, and Paul Luthaker. Those were the leading lights of the Morgan at the time, and Grace Godino and Mel Wixson, of course. I not only had played some parts there, but I also designed sets and helped build. Mel Wixson was like the product manager or production manager, and I designed a set for Separate Tables. I designed a set for RUR, which happened to be the very last show they did before it burned. They were rehearsing the next play, which I had nothing to do with, when the theater burned down.
Back then, the shows that they did, were they new works or were they published works, or what kind of shows did they choose to do?
Almost all published theater works. And I don't know when Jeffrey Morgan died. It was before I got to the theater, that's for sure. And Mel Wixson was very active, and some other people. Mel and Grace played in The Visit. They played in the Great Sebastians, and I don't know how many things. Just before I got to the theater, it was a very they had some movie stars involved. And Glenn Ford was very involved. He was a Santa Monica guy. And I presume through him, Grace Godino became the stand-in for Rita Hayworth. And she was also an artist. So she worked at Disney all those years. And she was a fine actress and very pretty lady too. Yeah. Meredith Willson used to come to our shows.
Really?
Yeah, because his secretary was one of our actresses. And when he was writing The Music Man, that was the era. And when The Music Man went to New York, why, the actress went with him.
What was the purpose of the Santa Monica Theater Guild back then, as you remember it?
Well, it was to supply theater to an area, Los Angeles, which didn't have any to speak of except the downtown at the hotel, which theater is now gone. Really no other theater, and certainly none on the west side. And then they started the Santa Monica Theater Guild, and then pretty soon Westchester started up, and Palisades started up.
I'm curious because I don't know a lot of people who were around Santa Monica in the 50s and 60s. How has the area changed?
When we were building the theater, we had Pickle Bill's across the street, which had sawdust on the floor and served roast beef sandwiches and big pickle. There was the sign out in front was an enormous pickle, must have been like 7 feet high. And the theater on Pico was designed by an architect for the Santa Monica Theater Guild. And we sat there and watched them clear the ground for the new building.
We all know the names Mel Wixson and Jeffrey Morgan, but who else were some of the important people in keeping the Morgan-Wixson alive through the years?
Well, really solid people were Ruth Dick, who actually back then, I don't think she was active in the Pico Theater, but back then she dated Harvey Korman when he played Hamlet at the old Morgan-Wixson in 1955. We had Charles Lawton come to the show.
Wow.
Betty Davis. I mean, we had, because they had connections, and there was no other theater back in the 50s in West Los Angeles. There wasn't anything.
So you designed a lot of sets. Did you study art in school, or it just was a natural talent?
I was in engineering school, so of course I had a lot of drawing. But the way I got started in theater, I was in engineering school, but in the evening I decided to take an English class, which was basically, it was taught by the acting director. I didn't realize that at the time. And so he insisted that I come and try out for some shows. And so I got in theater in college, whereas I hadn't been in any before. I went to a vocational high school, and we didn't have any such thing as theater or chorus or...
And so how many shows do you think you've done total at the Morgan-Wixson?
I've probably done 20, I suppose. I did several at the original theater. And then there was a period after the new theater was built when I wasn't involved with the Santa Monica Theater Guild. The kids were growing up. I did the Renaissance Fair. I did some other things for about 14 or 15 years. And then in the early 80s, I started doing things again at the Morgan. And I got my very best role at the Morgan in Beggar's Opera. Of course, I can't do anything anymore. I'm just too old. The last thing I did was 2015, I think. When we did All the King's Men. Because I played the judge driven to suicide. That was a good part.
You continue to usher at the Morgan-Wixson, and house manage, which is wonderful. What keeps you wanting to do that?
Well, Michael, I was on the board for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years way back then. I did a lot of big shows in the 80s. I got 3 Jeffrey Awards.
Did you?
One for featured actor and 2 for bit actors. And so I was just, involved. And of course, I always wanted to work with Tom Brown whenever he was building a set. It was a lot of fun. So that's why I stayed. And I thought, well, they need house managers. And so I started doing it. And I thought that, that I would continue doing that whenever I could. So at least once or twice every show.
If age wasn't a factor, what role would you still love to play today?
So I really would like to play some Shakespeare. And of course, I'd like to do King Lear, but I probably could never do anything again because, it's hard for me to memorize anything, which I'll tell you what I'm doing in place of it, Michael. Once a month, we have a program for seniors at 9 a.m. at Pacific Resident Theater, and we read. So I get a lot of reading there, and since they have few men and I can read fairly well, I usually read very large parts. So I get to do that. Plus, I sing normally 4 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week, ocean airs, to a choir rehearsal, Sunday morning choir, and the choir I'm in at St. Paul's in Westwood sings all the great music, Gabrielli, Tallis, Monteverdi, all this great stuff. It's a wonderful choir called the Schola Cantorum. So with that, with my quartet, with my barbershop chapter and the Schola, I would be singing, most like 4 or 5 times a week. On the weekends, I'm going to the Morgan, I'm going to PRT, I'm going to Rogue Theater.
Tom, may I ask your age now?
92.
92. Wow.
Yeah, and a half.
Well, hopefully by 93 we'll be reopened and you can be joining us again in the lobby.
Oh, I hope so. And who knows? There might even be a place for an old guy in one of the shows.
Who knows?
Be careful, Michael. You're not getting any younger.
This is true. Tom, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
I'll be seeing you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
I'll be seeing you. All the old familiar places.
Thank you, Tom. Bye.
Bye.